And we're back, everybody. So excited to keep you guys rolling here through us at the AWS End User Computing Innovation Day, our inaugural event, mind you. It's our first time for the category to be really sharing such exciting news, all condensed throughout the day's worth of content. So we're here today for building the ideal architect for remote and hybrid work. And man, we've got a lineup for you that covers in detail a lot of the challenges we're seeing across the board when managing those hybrid work environments, when wanting to make sure that you're scaling your business for your remote workers. And you know, one of the things that we hear a lot from customers is, you know, we've talked about price, we've talked about choice in terms of our category, but it's also about optimizing costs. And really, no matter the size of your organization, optimizing that cost is a really top of mind initiative for many organizations, many departments, regardless if you're coming from IT, from marketing to finance, of course, is having those cost optimizations top of mind. And I'm curious, Robbie, what are you hearing from customers?
Well, you know, I hear this all the time, and I think it's one of the biggest things that we hear from customers in VDI environments, particularly coming from on-prem VDI environments, because your biggest opportunities to optimize cost in those environments is really at your refresh cycle, and so that comes once every 3 to 5 years, and you know your options to cost optimize in between are kind of limited. But whenever you are deploying these things in the cloud, it's more of a pay-as-you-go model, and so you have a lot more flexibility in the ways that you can cost optimize. And so to talk to us more about that today, we brought one of our VDI experts into the room. I'd like to welcome Yvonne Dresser. Yvonne, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. And yes, I'm very glad to be here. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can optimize cost and top-line business value for the reinvented workspace. My name is Yvonne Dresser, and I'm with the business development team, and I'm happy to be sharing this information with you today. So for the agenda, my hope is that you walk away with a better understanding of 3 things. First is an understanding of the factors that contribute to cloud value, and then also how AWS thinks about cloud value. Second, what I hope you walk away with is an understanding of what desktop as a service is, or DaaS for short, and why and how you can leverage desktop as a service for powering the modern workforce era. And then third, we hope you walk away with a better insight on how to build a DaaS business strategy, whether it's migrating from an on-prem VDI solution, or if it's just about introducing a new device strategy. And so to get started, let's answer the question, where does cloud business value come from? And believe it or not, non-TCO drivers constitute over 90% of the business value of migrating to the cloud. And while the typical focus on initial migrations to the cloud are around cost savings, when we go back to customers and ask them where they realize the value, customers we've spoken to believe that things such as risk mitigation and user productivity, IT staff productivity, and just overall business productivity were really the more compelling benefits of moving to the cloud. And so as such, AWS has developed a cloud value framework. And this is a constructive way for us to think about the value of the cloud. This framework is based on hundreds of customer business cases and realized values that our cloud economics team has witnessed over the past years. And it's based upon these 4 pillars. The first pillar is around cost savings. And these are cost savings that are realized by avoiding supplying that on-premises infrastructure with large fixed spend, and also reducing that ongoing variable spend through the AWS economies of scale. The second pillar, IT staff productivity, this is about increasing output by the same size team because much of that previous tactical work is no longer needed. Operational resilience, this is another key value pillar achieved by enhanced availability, security, and less downtime as a result of the cloud. And the fourth pillar is business agility. And this is about being able to deliver more in terms of new products or new geographic location expansions or just more product features of your existing products. And in the context of end user computing, it's about being able to deploy new desktops and apps to users faster. And so before we get into how to leverage desktop as a service, let's quickly define what desktop as a service is. Desktop or as a service, or DaaS for short, is the modernization of virtual desktop infrastructure delivery. And so if you're unfamiliar with VDI, whereas traditional desktop delivery is about running on an operating system and the applications locally on an endpoint device, VDI is about running Windows or Linux servers in an on-prem data center and then sharing those resources, the compute, the memory, and the disk of all those servers with many users and providing them with a dedicated or non-persistent desktop. And then from there, virtually any device can access these desktops and streamed apps using a browser and then interact with these virtual machines with a special remoting protocol. And this remoting protocol translates the desktop and app's user interface, sending only the pixel data to the user's endpoint devices. And so this VDI concept, when it's translated to the cloud, is a fully managed desktop and app delivery service with most of that underlying infrastructure abstracted away. This is what the industry terms as DaaS. And so expanding on this DaaS concept, the key business and technical benefits for migrating to DaaS solutions from AWS end user computing include things such as being able to achieve greater technical agility and meeting business demands faster by using a service that can easily enable rapid scale out and scale in of virtual apps and desktops using the service's native capabilities, such as automated bulk desktop provisioning and deprovisioning, as well as policy-based auto-scaling. Another benefit is around reducing VDI solution costs. And this is about replacing upfront VDI infrastructure and software expenditures with a more variable expense or consumption-based spend. Another benefit is capturing more IT productivity, right? Now that you can virtually eliminate that VDI infrastructure management, you're reducing that time-consuming capacity planning, and you can now easily automate operational workflows using the AWS Cloud Platform of AWS services, tools, and the APIs. And then finally, organizations can also lower their business risk because you're now beneficiaries of the AWS data centers and its network, which is architected to improve your ability to meet core security and compliance requirements, and also take advantage of multiple availability zone and region deployments to help ensure high availability and business continuity of your virtual apps and desktops. Okay, so I just talked about the AWS Cloud Value Framework and the IT and business benefits of DaaS based on AWS's end-user computing services. So now let's go a click down and apply what I've shared on a more practical level. And at AWS, we see organizations migrating to DaaS from two primary directions. First is from an existing on-prem VDI solution, or it can be combined with a new device strategy such as BYOD for employees or third-party contractors. And so let's take a look at each of these migration scenarios separately. And so the primary drivers we see motivating organizations to migrate to DaaS from on-premise VDI. The first is around driving, the first driver is around aging infrastructure that requires significant capital outlay. And this is just to maintain the status quo, right? Another driver we hear from customers is about their ongoing struggle to keep up with security and compliance requirements. And this is due mainly to falling behind on VDI and infrastructure software upgrades. Another driver is the IT operations burden to support on-prem VDI. It just keeps growing. And this is largely driven by demand to support an ever larger and more distributed global end user base. And this may mean having to stand up VDI in additional data centers. And then along this line, IT also faces continuous either overcapacity issues, which can impact TCO, or undercapacity issues, which can impact IT's ability to react quickly to more volatile business demand. And so when you consider on-prem VDI total costs, that are there are four main buckets, right? And these may already be familiar to you. The first and the largest bucket, which is compute hardware and server maintenance. And this also includes things such as racks, power and cooling, and data center facility space. And so what we've been seeing with this bucket is this accounts for roughly 50+% of the on-prem VDI solution cost. This is followed by software, which is around 30% of the total cost. And this includes not only the VDI software, but also the Microsoft and the VMware vSphere licensing. And then there's the storage and networking buckets. They're a smaller percentage at about 10% each. And so what I'd like to do now is show you a VDI migration to AWS EUC TCO case study to illustrate for you where the potential savings and the top line business value are reflected. For this case study, we have an organization which is a regional financial services firm with about 5,000 employees. And today they're running on-prem VDI in their data center, and they have been for many years. The two primary user groups being supported are around 500 hybrid work employees across the organization, and they're in various departments. There's also another 250 end users supported in the company's contact center. And the work week is a typical 8x5 schedule. This schedule, the organization refreshes their hardware every 4 years, and they're due now for a refresh, which has generated a compelling event to explore an alternative solution such as DAS. And so currently the organization is spending around $335,000 annually, and with a hardware refresh that comes out to over $1.3 million over 3 years. So looking at this starting on the left, when you break down that $1.3 million cost, over half of it comes from server hardware, the server operations and data center services, which is compute. Software is also a significant cost as well. And storage and networking hardware will also be replaced. And there's ongoing operational costs associated with the solution, which are also included across the 4 buckets. And then moving to the right side of the slide, the total 3-year cost to run the equivalent of the on-prem VDI solution is much less at just $942,000 or $314,000 annually. And this figure is based on migrating to Amazon's AppStream 2.0 service and delivering non-persistent desktops. And then we've added Amazon S3 object storage for persisting the user personalization layer, which includes things such as user settings and user file data. And then another 10% to cover the cost of the AWS enterprise support. And so you see the difference between the two figures, on-prem versus AWS, is about 29% over 3 years, which is pretty significant. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there is more to cloud value than just TCO. It's also about other top-line value. And so to prove this out for AWS EUC services, we commissioned Forrester Consulting to conduct a total economic impact study. And this was to examine the potential return on investment, or ROI, enterprises may receive by deploying AWS end-user computing services, which include Amazon Workspaces and Amazon AppStream. The objective of this study was to provide readers with a framework to evaluate the potential financial impact of AWS EUC on their organizations, and this was from a benefits, a cost, and a risk perspective. Forrester approached this project by interviewing 6 decision makers from 4 organizations with experience using AWS EUC services, and then Forrester aggregated the interviewees' experiences and combined the results into a single composite organization. So this composite organization has about 5,000 employees, with 50% of the users on AWS EUC, and they hire about 1,000 contractors per year, and they're also on AWS EUC. The composites IT organization has 15 full-time equivalents, supporting all of the end-user computing strategy, including traditional laptop and desktop environments, as well as VDI. And so based on the data collected from customer interviews and modeled to this composite customer, the following economic value was calculated, and it showed that the biggest benefit was increased profit from the ability of the organization to be more agile. A lot of this came from being able to quickly turn on workspaces and AppStream during the COVID pandemic to maintain company productivity and avoid losing business from having to shut down. It was also about being able to acquire new business from competitors who had to shut down because they didn't have the right technology to remain open. Some of the other business benefits included faster time to productivity due to faster onboarding. This was the second highest business benefit. So the AWS customers we interviewed said that provisioning workspaces or AppStream accounts, as opposed to providing physical laptops or new hires, to significantly shorten the onboarding process for employees and contractors. This meant that these workers could be productive sooner. TCO savings from introducing BYOD was a third business benefit. So the interview decision makers said that having AWS EUC services meant that they could introduce a BYOD model. And so employees and contractors could choose to use their own personal device, which means that these organizations could reduce, if not completely eliminate, the practice of purchasing physical laptops and desktops, having to provision and ship them to their employees and their contractors. And then the fourth business benefit was increased staff productivity. And this is from the automation capabilities of using a fully managed service from AWS. So the AWS customers we interviewed noted that the fully managed service automated various aspects of their work that they previously had to do manually. So this translated into recaptured time of their IT team schedules. This is IT time that could be reallocated to other IT projects, for example. And another customer said that they saw 25% of their IT time recaptured on infrastructure maintenance and security patching tasks alone. Okay, so we're going to talk about the second DaaS migration scenario, which is around driven a lot of times by the desire to enable secure access to using non-company-owned devices, or it could be a desire to extend the life of existing PCs, or just to give end users the option to access company systems using non-Windows devices. So in fact, we see a lot of customers pivot to DaaS as a way to accelerate the onboarding of third-party contractors by shifting away that device responsibility to contractors to provide their own devices, so IT organizations no longer have to go through that lengthy procurement and shipping processes, which we've been told can take weeks, if not months. And then another trend we see is the desire to extend the life of existing devices, either as a means of delaying new device purchases or just out of the necessity due to low inventory of new hardware from hardware manufacturers. And then when you look at the traditional PC device costs, as we know, the device hardware and software is just half of the financial equation. The other half is consumed by typical PC lifecycle management costs, such as procurement or imaging, deployment, systems management, and end user support. And so taking a look at the graph on the right from Dell, we see that typical PC lifecycle costs are roughly $24 per month per device, with more than 50% of that cost tied up in systems management and support. And so when we apply what we know about total device costs to a variety of new device strategy options, at one end of the spectrum you have BYOD, right, where nearly all of the inherent costs are eliminated. Costs such as the device hardware, the Windows OS, the VPN, maybe even endpoint security. And then you can also lower, if not eliminate, the lifecycle costs if it's an unmanaged device. When it comes to repurposing existing PCs as thin clients, again, you're eliminating many of the same costs as BYOD. The Windows license might be replaced with a less expensive Linux OS, but since a repurposed PC as a thin client is likely still a managed device, more of the lifecycle management costs get applied. And then as you move further to the right and think about trading in traditional Windows or Macs for new device form factors, such as Chromebooks and thin clients, you'll find that the costs are not that much different from the cost of a traditional device. Most of the lifecycle costs remain, and while you're eliminating that Windows license, it's replaced by other required software necessary to manage these new form factors. And so what you'll find is combining a Chromebook or a Linux thin client with DaaS is more of a break-even cost scenario. However, there are still other good reasons to adopt these devices, such as higher protection against malicious threats, since most of the threat actors today are still assuming that the endpoint is a Windows device. Okay, so let's take a look at another TCO case study. And here we have an organization looking to migrate from a company-owned or managed devices to a BYOD model and implementing AWS EUC services. This organization is a regional retail clothing firm with 150 stores and about 5,000 employees. They'd like to transition a couple of user groups representing about 500 users that are hybrid remote employees and contractors. BYOD and deploy DaaS from AWS end user computing. So today, these user groups are issued a combination of low and mid-range laptops that are refreshed every 4 years. And these are managed devices with a suite of endpoint security and endpoint management software. The new device strategy entails permitting end-user-owned devices such as PCs and Macs and Chromebooks and tablets to access the cloud desktops and apps from AWS using multi-factor authentication. And so based on this retail customer's background, this is what the costs look like between the existing device strategy and the new BYOD device strategy, combined with AWS EUC services. And so starting on the left side of the slide, we see that the cost of the existing physical device strategy for 519 users is about $1 million over 3 years. The biggest costs are the lifecycle management at $448K and the laptop devices themselves at $363K. And then on the right, we see that the 3-year total cost to implement AWS EUC and BYOD is only $744,000 over 3 years. This equates to a 3-year TCO savings of 26%. So with the AWS EUC solution, the highest cost is the AppStream service, and there's a new Microsoft RDS client access license that gets introduced. But you see that the lifecycle management cost is eliminated. And so to recap, the 3 big takeaways I wish to leave you with are, 1, AWS Cloud Value is about more than just infrastructure cost savings. It's also about business agility, meaning the ability of IT to respond quickly to meet the latest business requirements. And it's also about freeing up precious IT resources to devote to other projects. DaaS is a key enabling technology that can help your organization transform its workforce in the new hybrid workforce era. And AWS has the templates to help you build a DaaS business case, whether you're evaluating replacing your existing on-prem VDI solution, or exploring a new device strategy such as BYOD, or repurposing an existing PC fleet and moving that compute power from the device to the cloud. And so if you'd like to learn more about this topic, may I suggest you read the Forrester Total Economic Impact Study based on AWS EUC. This white paper is published on our website. And you may also register to watch an upcoming webinar on VDI migration to AWS EUC. And with that, I wish to thank you very much. And as a friendly reminder, please complete the survey. There's just 2 questions, and I appreciate your feedback. And that's all I have to share.
Yvonne, thank you again so much. Lots of detail in there, and what a great opportunity to dive into that case study. You see it live, you really see the before and after, the after, of course, being using the AWS EUC services. I have to say that some of the biggest takeaways that I enjoyed kind of reflect on these frameworks and these principles that AWS really tries to infuse into the services. Mm-hmm. We heard earlier from Andrew Wood in his kind of when to choose the right service, the framework that he brought to the table about the well-architected principles. And of course, that's the operational excellence, the security, the reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. And here you are telling us about the AWS Cloud Value Framework that covers a little bit more about kind of how are you working with the IT teams and the resources at your disposal, from your cost savings and of course your TCO, mm-hmm. the operational resiliency, the staff productivity, and of course the business agility that's needed across businesses. So that for me was such a big takeaway in understanding how you can kind of map up some of the challenges that you're having to an AWS framework that helps you clarify maybe some of your questions and where to get started. So that was one of my takeaways from this session. And mm-hmm. Robbie, I'm kind of curious to hear from you. What were some of the items that stood out, or a takeaway that really rung true for you?
Well, so I've read this Forrester study, that the Total Economic Impact study that Yvonne was talking about, and it really changed the way that I think, or the way that I thought about the ways that customers can cost optimize in these environments. And so I think it's kind of a dense read for those of you out there who haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'd highly recommend investing the time, because I think there are some fundamentals in there that may not be super straightforward to someone who hasn't deployed desktop as a service or cloud-based VDI before. So I'd love for you guys to spend the time, read through that. We did get some questions in, particularly one from our resident boy band lover. I love NSYNC.
Yeah, I'm a fan too. So thanks for that shout out.
Yeah. So the basis of the question here, Yvonne, and I'll toss this over to you, is you were talking a lot about TCO savings and talked particularly about one use case where they saved like 29%. And the question that he brought forward, or they brought forward, I guess, is does that assume that employees are using their own PCs, and any insight on how exactly they got there?
Yeah, so I believe that was the first TCO case study on VDI migration.
Mm-hmm.
And with that case study, no, it's not BYOD. We're assuming that they're using managed laptops, managed desktops, yeah.
Very cool.
So. Mm-hmm.
And definitely, of course, read more of those details in the case study that Yvonne was mentioning. The full details are there. And we always like to make sure that we're recapping some of the questions that we hear often from customers. And one of those, of course, is just how do I go about getting a migration TCO analysis for my own organization? I'm sure that's a question you hear a lot from customers.
Sure. So at AWS, I've worked with the cloud economics team to produce some specific TCO tools for VDI migration in particular, as well as this new device strategy that I talked about. These TCO tools are available, and the way to start off a TCO project for your organization is to contact your account team, your AWS account team, and that will put you in touch with our AUC specialist sellers and SAs, and they can. We have tools again that we can apply your data. We fill out a questionnaire, you apply that data, and we run the TCO numbers and then provide you with a report. So it's pretty much that simple.
Yeah, and if you don't know who your AWS account team is, just hit us at aws.amazon.com/workspaces. There's a contact us link right there. Just fill that form out, and we'll have someone in touch with you very shortly to help through that.
Yep.
That's such a popular website, I would say. Bookmark it, star it, lots of resources mentioned today from the launches. Of course, the Ubuntu Getting Started free tier. Now, of course, if you're wanting to dive deep into your particular use cases, your particular setup in organization, reach out to us. Of course, we want to dive into your scenarios and make sure that our recommendations, our advisement is going to be tailored to you. We've got a team ready to support you with that. So as Robbie mentioned, back to that website, you can, of course, contact us, and we're going to make sure that you're taken care of. One more question for you, Yvonne. I'm sure, again, another question that you hear a lot from customers is just where they can learn more about the cloud economics of DaaS, and how would you recommend someone go about learning more?
Yeah, so first of all, read the Forrester TEI study. I think that's a really good and very useful tool. And then we're holding a webinar on October 4th. That'll also be available on demand. And I recommend that you attend that webinar as well. So we're going to, again, go deep dive into some of these case studies. And then also, if there is information, I don't know where it would be, but on cloud economics in general at AWS, there is some really valuable information there that goes into, what are the key value levers around the value of AWS Cloud. So I think there's some really good information out there if you want to dive deeper on TCO and business value.
Yeah, and I actually can tell you exactly where that is. That's at aws.amazon.com/economics.
There you go.
Yeah, that's where you can find more on what Yvonne was just talking about.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Well, like we said, lots of information to go throughout the day. We've covered a lot with the total cost TCO information, and Yvonne, we thank you for those details.
Sure.
You also brought up a good point. We do host a lot of these live events today, but we are going to be the sessions that you've heard are going to be on demand and available for you after the event. So any of these sessions that you're finding really detailed and wanting to dive back or kind of rewatch, know that you're going to have access to those, but stay with us. I want you to stick with us the rest of the day. Just know that you're definitely going to be be able to rewatch some of this content later. Both, of course, available on the AWS channels and on Twitch. We'll make sure that you get those links. Stick with us, though. We've got some more sessions lined up for the day, especially those technical deep dives as we get into the afternoon. So stick with us. We've got more to come.